So what on earth is planing? Generally speaking, most dictionaries describe it as gliding, soaring, or floating. But when it is used in the context of music harmony, it has a very specific meaning. And it is often associated with a practice that was used a lot in the Impressionist era, synonymous with the music of Debussy and Ravel. So during the late 19th century, composers started experimenting with the use of upper extensions in their harmony and ended up creating these large chords, sometimes with very tight spacing between the notes, or what we usually call clusters. However, when trying to stick to traditional voice leading with its emphasis on contrary motion, they found that the voices tended to collide and lacked distinction. As a result, they started voice leading chords using parallel motion as if they were a single melodic line. And this has become known as planing. I'm Richie Zellen, and in this info-filled lesson, I am going to show you 3 different categories of planing in the music of Debussy. I'm also going to show you how several great jazz musicians have incorporated these varieties of planing into their playing, both when comping and improvising. So get ready for examples by pianists Bill Evans, McCoy Tyner, Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett, and guitarist Jim Hall. But most important of all, I am going to teach you how you can use these concepts to add some exciting new chordal textures when playing over any jazz standard. So let's get started. Most harmonic segments featuring planing as used by the Impressionists are not considered functional harmony. In other words, the chords can't be classified in terms of dominant and tonic. They are more like a string of harmonic textures, so to speak, to get from point A to point B, sometimes within the context of an existing tonality. And this analogy holds the key to understand how post-bop jazz musicians frequently employ the concept to create renewed interest within a familiar progression. The first category we are going to examine is known as diatonic planing. In diatonic planing, all voices follow the pitch classes of a major or minor scale or diatonic mode. Even though examples of planing abound in the music of Debussy and Ravel, in this lesson we are going to stick to their use within Debussy's music, given that he introduced the concept first. So that said, this first example is from The Sunken Cathedral. So if we look at all the measures, there are no alterations. Everything is diatonic to C major. Now, if we examine the voice leading between all the chords, we will see that they all move using parallel motion strictly. This is diatonic planing. And the instance in which there isn't parallel movement in all the voices between the chords, it is no longer planing. Back to this example, notice that the planing takes place over an ongoing C pedal in the bass. And we are going to learn that the use of pedals are used frequently during planing, especially in jazz. If we analyze each chord, we can see that they are all triads. The first is a C major, the second one a D minor, the third one a G major, followed by an F major, E minor, D minor, which repeats again in the following measure, followed by an A minor and E minor. Then we have a D minor again and end on a C major. To demonstrate the concept of diatonic planing on the guitar, All I have to do is harmonize the notes of a C major scale throughout the fretboard. And I'm going to use all the notes on the second string starting with the root and harmonize them with drop 2 voicings. So I'm going to do So applying it in a jazz context on the Kind of Blue recording by Miles Davis, pianist Bill Evans introduced diatonic modal planing using quartal harmony. And he harmonized the Dorian mode using a specific voicing consisting of fourths and adding a third, a diatonic third on top. So here's a sequence. And this is where we get So What?, which is based on diatonic modal planing. Let's look at the second category of planing, and this is where it starts getting interesting. In strict, or what they call real planing, the voices maintain exact interval relationships, resulting in a sonority that is merely transposed after its first appearance. And jazz musicians sometimes refer to this concept as constant structure, because it consists of a progression where an identical voicing structure is simply moved to a different pitch level. Listen to this example from Evening in Granada by Debussy. This is based on a 1-4-5 progression, but although there is parallel movement from chord to chord, it is not all diatonic. The first measure is based on an F-sharp major, which ascends in parallel stepwise motion to the second measure, where we have a B major, and with the final chord being a C-sharp 7. The second two measures repeat the same chords, except that they end on a D7. Here's one more example of strict planing by Debussy from Sounds and Perfumes Swirl in the Evening Air. In the third measure, we have some strict planing in the upper staff. These are all major triads in first inversion. A G major, E major, C major, E major again, G major again, E major again, and then in the next measure, C major, A major, back to C major, to E major, and finally G sharp major. Again, this is strict planing, which is chromatic transposition of an identical voicing, which in this case happens to be a major triad in first inversion. Now let's listen to how Bill Evans introduced some strict planing in a jazz context. This is again from Kind of Blue, and again on So What? And if you're familiar with the very beginning of this track, it features a short intro where you hear just the piano and bass playing rubato over a short non-functional progression. Unfortunately, this is one I can't play the original recording for you due to copyright restrictions, so I'll play the two measures with planing here on guitar. We can see here that all the planing consists of major thirds in second inversion over a D pedal. The only exception is the A minor triad, but other than that, strict planing takes place throughout the whole progression. Let me play this segment. And we can see here that in comparison to piano, planing is very easy on the guitar because all we have to do is take a shape, a given shape, in this case the major triad, and just move it around the fretboard. And that is the reason why it is so popular among rock guitarists to take a power chord and that is planing at its simplest. Here's another example of strict planing from Herbie Hancock's intro to Summertime on his album Gershwin's World. So basically all Herbie is doing is using the same voicing that Bill Evans used on So What, only that moving it around, not totally diatonic, that is doing some chromatic movement like this. Next, let's listen to Jim Hall using some strict planing in his intro to Love Letters. Again, we have the So What voicing, this time employed by Jim Hall. And there are two planing segments in this introduction. In the very first one, he harmonizes this melody, which pertains to the standard that he's playing over, Love Letters, and it goes like this. And then in the second segment, at the end of the intro, and what is so cool is that he turns the very last voicing into the 5/7 sus4 of the new tonic that he's going to resolve to, which is F. So and if you want to know more about the use of the So What chord and its variations, check out my video on how pros use suspended fourth chords to comp over jazz standards. And I'll place a link in the info section down below. And it's time to explore the third category, which is mixed planing. Here the voices use a mixture of diatonic and chromatic planing techniques. And be sure to stick with me because after I show you this category, I am going to show you some 2/5s using planing as well as a standard harmonized almost entirely using this concept. Our first example of mixed planing comes from Debussy's Dancers of Delphi. Here we have a combination of different triad types ascending chromatically in the upper staff. It starts out with a B flat major, then a B augmented, and a C sharp augmented. The same repeats again on the second measure. Let's check out some mixed planing on Debussy's Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. And notice the chromatically ascending dominant chords in the bass clef here. Mixed planing is used a lot in jazz, especially by post-bop pianists when comping. You hear lots of this in the playing of Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, for example. Next, let's listen to a great example of planing employing quartal harmony by one of its earliest pioneers, pianist McCoy Tyner. And this is from the end of his solo on Passion Dance. Unfortunately, again, I can't play the original due to copyright restrictions, but here is a MIDI sequence of the transcription. Notice again that the planing takes place over a pedal. This is characteristic in McCoy Tyner's use of planing. This example consists of two types of voicings which freely move in parallel motion both diatonically and chromatically. The first voicing is just a series of fourths. And the second voicing is the so what voicing, which has two stacked fourths and a third on top. If you like McCoy Tyner's use of planing, I want to suggest that you watch my tribute video to McCoy Tyner, and I will place a direct link in the info section down below. For our final example on mixed planing, I'd like to feature Keith Jarrett, and this is from his extended intro to Autumn Leaves off his Live at the Blue Note recording. If you haven't heard this, be sure to check it out because it is a masterpiece when it comes to Impressionist harmony and its application to a well-known jazz standard. The original is several minutes long, and this little excerpt is the only segment where he uses planing. Notice that all the moving triads take place over an E7 chord acting as a pedal. Keith Jarrett's use of mixed planing in the previous example serves as a model for other triad combinations within a functional context like a 2-5-1. And let me show you one that I like to use with an augmented and minor triad combination. And let me do this resolving to either an A minor or a C6. I'm taking the place of the dominant with this reharmonization, and it's that's the line that I'm harmonizing, okay? Let me show you another use of mixed planing that I like to use as a 2-5. And this one features the so what voicings being used instead of the dominant. And here's a variation. If you like the 2-5-1 cadences I just showed you, I want to tell you about the mega study package that you can download for this lesson. It includes PDFs with notation and tab for all the examples, plus 12 different 2-5-1 cadences featuring different types of planing that you can use when comping or creating chord melody. Also a PDF with notation and tab of chord melody arrangements using planing over Beautiful Love and There Will Never Be Another You. Plus MP3s of me playing each example. Also band-in-a-box files of both chord melody arrangements and MIDI files of them as well. And you can download them for a nominal contribution from jazzguitar.richiezeland.com/premium. So are you ready to incorporate planing in your playing? Even if you already use diatonic planing, I hope you've come to realize that there is lots more to explore regarding this concept. I hope you have enjoyed and learned something new from this lesson. As usual, I appreciate your likes, comments, and welcome your questions. And if this is your first time on this channel and you enjoyed this lesson, please be sure to subscribe. I'm Richie Zeland, and I look forward to bringing you another info-filled lesson real soon. Until then, you know the drill. Practice, 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 then rinse and repeat. May peace be with you. Nos vemos pronto.